So before I share, I've been given 12 minutes, I know, but first I'd like to thank Rotary Club for honoring me, and of course my wife will come up later. So thank you for honoring us both for, we've seen awards given for different categories, but for science, it's very rare. So thanks for that. Recognizing science is an important topic of discussion. So thanks for that. And thank you, Pradeep, for always being there for Mango right from the beginning for almost a decade. Thank you. So usually 12 minutes may appear a longer time for some people, but for me it's very short. I usually talk for hours, but somehow I made points, so I won't go beyond 12 minutes. I promise. I see the timer ahead of me. So three things I want to share with you. One is, how did I get inspired into science? Okay, that would, I think, connect with you all, how you found your passion in your life. So one is, first thing, I started teaching science to kids in 2014. I called it the Atom Academy. Okay, I mean, it's still audible.
Let's come a little closer. Yeah.
Okay, both the mics. Okay, now I can hear myself louder. Okay, so I started a science academy called the Atom Academy in 2013 with pure intention to get kids interested in science. That's all. So I set up electrical labs. I set up optics. Telescopes. I brought many things as part of the lab, but one of the things I brought was a small telescope, a refractor. It's like a binocular, but with only one part of it, a monocular. Okay. So in the free time when the classes were not happening, I used the telescope to scan the skies. Of course, I did see the moon because it's easier to find. It's big. You can't miss it. And if you're missing finding the moon in the sky using a telescope, something's definitely wrong with you. It's quite big. You can't miss it. So it was quite wonderful. The craters were awesome. I fell in love with the moon. Yes, but the next object I was trying to find was Saturn, because that was there in the sky. So it was a little harder because it's a tiny point of light in the sky, and if you're not trained to use a telescope, it might be really hard to find the first time. And somehow, after hours and hours of effort, I was able to focus on Saturn, and that, I think, blew my mind, because I could see the rings of Saturn. Okay, look, we all know the Saturn has rings. Okay, we've seen it in textbooks, but it's almost like we've taken the fact that Saturn has rings on faith. My teachers told me, so it must be true. It is on the books, so it must be true. But when you're seeing it for the first time for yourself, right, it hits you different. Oh, Saturn has rings, and I can see it. And it's coming from over 120 crore kilometers away. Okay, it's not like you're seeing something that's really close by. 1.2 billion kilometers away, that is Saturn, and the light from it is reaching my eyes. But where did the light start? It came from the sun. Sun's light traveling all the way to the Saturn, hitting on the surface, bouncing off, and it's coming through my telescope, hitting my eye, and I'm seeing it. And that really hit different. And the joy was too much. I couldn't control. I want to shout, look, I saw Saturn rings, but no one around me at that time. So this too much of joy I couldn't contain. I had to share with somebody. Then I realized I have a crowd already of students. So I really wanted them to feel the joy of seeing Saturn, not just Saturn, but many things in the sky as well. And that's how my astronomy journey began. Now I think over 10 years now into the journey, I think at least 2,000, 3,000 kids would have seen through my telescope. I'm sure they were inspired by different things they saw through the telescope. So that is my first moment that got me into science or astronomy per se, Saturn. So of course, since all of you are from Coimbatore, at any point in time, if you want to see Saturn or any other objects, I'm there. So with a lot of telescopes, we can plan for one. Yes. So this is the first thing I wanted to share. The second thing I wanted to share was, I have 8 minutes left. Okay. So second thing I wanted to share was, when I teach kids, right? So I found something very unusual that we've been part of. Okay. I used to test the audience by asking questions. So before I take a class, I don't come prepared with certain set of things to teach them before I understood the audience. And you usually don't get to understand the audience unless you meet them, right? So I have some test questions. Depending on their responses, then I plan my talk and everything. So one of the questions during one of the summer camps, I asked a question to a group of 5th graders to 8th graders. Okay, I asked them, what is light? I didn't expect a correct answer, or I didn't expect an answer at all. I just wanted to know what way were they thinking about light at that point in life. So one of the child, a lot of people said a lot of answers, but one child in grade 7, they gave me an answer, light is an electromagnetic radiation. I was just taken aback. Okay, how would this child know these set of words at grade 7? We're not introduced about it until grade 11, right? So then I asked, then I really suspected, does the child really know what light means? Or is it just a bunch of words that the kid has learned from somewhere? Then I started digging in the child. Do you know what those 3 words stand for, electromagnetic radiation? The child had no clue. But the child was very happy that the child answered my question. So he was beaming with joy that he has correctly answered it. And imagine what would have happened if the question was asked in school and the child wrote that answer. What would have happened? Marks would have been awarded. So what would have that done to the child? Reinforced the thought the child knew what was right. So I call this illusion of knowledge. Okay, so you think you know something and somebody acknowledges that you know something, but you have really no clue about it. It's just a bunch of words with no meaning for you. And that really struck me hard. Okay, here I usually quote one of my inspirations in science to being a science communicator is Richard Feynman. Anybody heard of Richard Feynman? Some of you may have been. Okay, Richard Feynman is, thank you, yes, I'm glad. So Richard Feynman is a Nobel laureate. He won his Nobel Prize for his works on quantum electrodynamics in physics. Okay, so he says as a technique of teaching, okay, he saw a textbook, a third grade textbook somewhere in US, where there was a picture on the third chapter or fourth chapter where it was a picture of a toy machine. I think it was a toy cart, and there was a question below the toy. What makes the toy move, or what makes this move? And there was a space for answer. Okay, so now what do you think makes the toy move or that machine move? What would you have answered? A third grade book has a question with a picture of a machine that can move with wheels, and it's asking what makes the toy move. Energy. That's the expected answer. The expected answer is energy, and if the child has written energy, they would have been awarded marks. But the problem is energy is such an abstract concept. The child again has no idea what energy is. Is that what you want to teach a child? That energy moves the toy? No, that is doing a disservice to the question. So what should have been the answer? It's a mechanical toy, so you can talk about what makes up the toy, what is the wheel connected to, what makes the wheel spin, is it a bunch of springs or some other levers that's making, so that should have been the answer for the question, what makes the toy move, what is the composition of the, not energy. Energy is too abstract a word or too simple a word at that age to teach the child, and you keep teaching them until they come up in real life, and when they're really actually dealing with problems where things have to move and they have to deal with, they have no clue what they're dealing with. Okay, so this again is the second thing I want to share, the illusion of knowledge that I wanted to dispel. So whatever I want to teach through my classes and sessions, through my team, I want them to understand the most, like learning from first principles for anything that they learn, not just astronomy. Okay, the last thing that I do, I know I have just about 3.5 minutes. So another thing that again I'm glad you brought it up.
Making me guilty.
Yes, I've succeeded. Thank you. Oh, I wanted you to say that as well. Thank you. So the third thing that I focus on during my sessions or through Mango, what we try to do is scientific temper or rational thinking that we've long forgotten. Okay, I'll share a very quick story in a minute or so. In less than a minute, I'll try to cut short the story. So there was a group of sailors in the 16th century, okay, who were moving west. They were finding the Western countries, the so-called Western countries they were trying to find. And one of the islands they end up landing, being on an island. And whenever, sailors end up, stranded on an island or go to an island, so who would they be greeting with? The natives of that island, right? And they usually go with a lot of gifts and toys to bribe them in return for shelter and food so that they can stay for a few months and they're sorted until they can return. So initially the tribals, the local people were very happy to welcome them and all that. But there would come a point where there was a lot of tension between the sailors and the local people because there was famine or something that was happening. And they started even hurting each other physically. So now the sailor had to come up with a plan to somehow stay for a little longer so that they can safely go back. But the local people are like, they have to leave immediately. So he had something with him called an almanac. I don't know if you know what an almanac is. It's a list of exhaustive astronomical events that happens for over centuries, okay? So he knew there was a total lunar eclipse that was coming on Feb 29, 1504. 1504 is a leap year, by the way. It happens to be on the Feb 29th itself. So 3 days before the eclipse happens, he just goes on to the tribe leader of the tribe and says, look, you have have displeased our gods. Our gods are not happy with you at all. Okay, so we are going to make our anger express itself by turning the moon blood red in color. The local tribe was like, just laughed it off. You just think he's a madman. I'm not going to trust you. But all the sailor had to do was wait until the day arrived. And the day arrives, Feb 29. And the total lunar eclipse, if you knew the geometry of how planets would be, the sun, as the sun sets on one side, the moon will rise on the other side, which is a full moon day. Okay, and as the moon was rising, you could see already the shadow has creeped in. The moon was already cut off. Okay, and in few hours, the entire moon was in Earth's shadow, making the moon appear blood red in color. And these local tribes had no idea what was going on, and they just freaked out. Like this man has predicted a certain event, and it's happened exactly the way he predicted. He would just run screaming at them, the tribes, please give us back our moon. I don't want to displease your gods anymore, so we'll give you whatever you want, just give us back our moon. So now to which the sailor says, okay, let me get back in. Okay, he knows he has to wait a little longer to give back the moon because the earth has to exit the shadow, right? It takes some time. So he sits inside his room with his hourglass, waits for about an hour, then comes out and tells, okay, I think I've spoken to the gods. Now the gods are happy. You can have your moon back. And as he speaks, the moon is coming out of the shadow. Now this might sound very smart from the perspective of the sailor. Okay, but from the perspective of the people, they've been taken for a ride. All too because they didn't know what was going on. People often say ignorance is bliss. No. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is quite dangerous. And imagine a society that is ignorant of basic things. You can be taken for a ride. Today, of course, you might not believe if someone says, the gods are angry, that's why the moon is getting red. Because you know of it, what's going on. But there could be 100 other things that you don't know. And that could be used to deceive you. Or that is where scientific thinking and scientific temper comes in. And by the way, the sailor who was dealing with this whole situation is Christopher Columbus. Okay, and the island he was stranded on is Jamaica, that we call today. And it's an actual story that's happened. It was documented by his son on his biography. So scientific thinking, rational thinking is very important as a society, and I'm doing my part to impart it in my classes, to my talks. And I hope, just like how we defend ourselves physically, what do? We learn some martial arts, right? If you want to defend yourself physically, you learn martial arts. If you want to defend your mind but from being deceived or fooled, I think you should have the scientific temper. So that's like a line of defense for your mind. So that's what I would say. So time's up, I know, but I covered 3 things. So what I think brought me into astronomy, and second, the illusion of knowledge. Third, I think the scientific temper. Thank you all, and thanks for the honor, Rotary. Thank you.